What if the real reason you're emotionally exhausted isn't what happened to you, but what you keep doing to yourself every single day? Take a moment and think about it. How many times have you put other people's needs ahead of your own? How many times have you said yes when you desperately wanted to say no? How many times have you ignored your own feelings, buried your pain, swallowed your desires, and continued carrying responsibilities that were never yours to bear? Maybe you believed that was what maturity looked like. Maybe you called it love, generosity, or kindness. But what if I told you that, according to Carl Jung, this pattern may be hiding something far deeper, and far more dangerous? There's a reason why so many people live in a constant state of exhaustion, anxiety, and emotional depletion, even while doing everything they believe is right. There's a reason why some people devote their entire lives to taking care of everyone else, yet still carry a sense of emptiness that never goes away. And that reason isn't necessarily found in relationships, work, family, or external circumstances. It lies in a silent battle taking place within the mind itself. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying the invisible conflicts that shape human behavior. He realized that many people live disconnected from who they truly are. They spend years building an identity that the world will accept, a version of themselves designed to be loved, approved of, and accepted. Little by little, without even realizing it, they begin to abandon essential parts of their true identity. And the farther they drift from themselves, the more they suffer. Maybe you know this feeling all too well. The feeling of always being available for everyone else, but never for yourself. Of being the strong one for everyone while quietly falling apart inside. Of feeling guilty whenever you try to set healthy boundaries. Of believing that taking care of yourself is selfish. If any of this resonates with you, know that you're not alone. Millions of people live this way, trapped in a pattern that looks like virtue on the outside but is quietly draining their energy, their self-worth, and their inner peace. The most surprising part is that what you believe to be an expression of love may actually be turning into a silent form of self-neglect. And that's a difficult truth to accept. Because no one likes to admit they've spent years abandoning themselves. No one wants to realize that, while trying to save everyone around them, they neglected the one person who needed their care the most. But Jung uncovered something even deeper. Something that explains why some people simply cannot put themselves first, even when they're suffering. Something that reveals how behaviors that seem completely conscious are, in reality, being driven by hidden forces within the unconscious mind. And once you understand this, you'll begin to see your own story in a completely different light. Because the real question isn't simply why you care so much for everyone else. The real question is, what happened that made you believe you had to do that in order to deserve love, acceptance, and a sense of worth? And I'd love to hear your story as well. Leave a comment saying, "I'm learning to choose myself," or, in your own words, share whether you've ever felt like you spent too much of your life putting everyone else first while leaving yourself for last. I read many of your comments, and they serve as a powerful reminder that no one has to walk this journey alone. When you share your experience, you may end up giving someone else the courage they need to finally acknowledge their own pain. And if you're passionate about understanding the human mind, deepening your self-awareness, and discovering how Carl Jung's teachings can help you build a more conscious, authentic, and emotionally free life, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every video here is an invitation to look beneath the surface, uncover the invisible patterns shaping your life, and begin a genuine journey of inner transformation. Because knowledge has the power to change the way you see the world, but more importantly, it changes the way you see yourself. Now, there's an important question we need to face. If putting yourself first is something so natural, why do so many people feel guilty, afraid, or even ashamed when they try to do exactly that? The answer isn't a lack of willpower, nor is it simply part of your personality. It lies in a deep psychological mechanism that begins long before you're even aware of it, and that's exactly what we're about to uncover. Most people believe that emotional suffering comes only from what others have done to them, from the rejection they experienced, the hurtful words they heard, the losses they endured, or the disappointments they never managed to leave behind. all of those things certainly leave scars. But there's another wound, far quieter and often overlooked, that slowly grows over time, the moment you begin abandoning yourself in order to keep someone else's love, approval, or place in their life. That's when the pain stops coming only from the outside world and begins to be fueled by unconscious choices that you repeat day after day. Maybe, from a very young age, you learned that you always had to be strong. Maybe you discovered that showing sadness made other people uncomfortable, that expressing your own needs was seen as selfish, or that saying no filled you with guilt. Without even realizing it, you started creating a version of yourself that seemed more acceptable. A version that smiled when it wanted to cry, that comforted others while desperately needing comfort itself, that solved everyone else's problems while hiding its own inner chaos. To the outside world, that person looked admirable. But deep inside, there was an emptiness that was impossible to put into words. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Those words invite us to ask an uncomfortable question. What if your need to put everyone else first isn't a conscious choice, but a pattern that has been shaping your life for years? What if what you call kindness is, at least in part, rooted in a deep fear of not being loved for who you truly are? Once you begin to consider that possibility, so many things start to make sense. The constant anxiety, the emotional exhaustion, the difficulty setting boundaries, and the persistent feeling of never being enough stop looking like personal flaws and begin to reveal a much deeper inner conflict. Analytical psychology teaches us that no one can truly live in peace while remaining disconnected from their own essence for too long. The more you silence your inner voice to meet the expectations of others, the more your energy fades away. You keep functioning. You keep smiling. You keep fulfilling your roles. But deep down, you feel as though an essential part of you has been left behind. And perhaps the greatest tragedy of all is becoming so accustomed to living this way that you start believing it's simply normal. If, as you listen to these words, you realize this story is also your own, leave a comment with the words, "Today, I begin choosing myself." That simple declaration could mark the beginning of a transformation, one that starts within you before gradually changing everything around you. But there's still one question that needs to be answered. If this pattern causes so much emotional suffering, why is it so difficult to let go of? Why do some people continue putting everyone else first, even after realizing it's destroying their inner peace? The answer begins in a place we rarely think to look, the identity we were forced to build in order to survive emotionally. Carl Jung observed that we all develop a psychological structure known as the persona. It functions as a social mask, the image we present to the world so we can be accepted, valued, and protected. The persona isn't a problem in itself. It's necessary for living and functioning in society. The real danger arises when we forget it's only a mask and begin believing it defines who we truly are. That's the moment the disconnection begins. Imagine a child who realizes they receive affection only when they're obedient, when they don't complain, and when they meet their family's expectations. Little by little, that child learns it's safer to hide their emotions than to express them. They learn that being useful is more valuable than being authentic. Without realizing it, they grow up believing their worth depends on how well they can please others. Even in adulthood, that programming continues to operate quietly beneath the surface. You say yes when you long to say no. You take on responsibilities that were never yours to carry. You tolerate situations that slowly erode your self-esteem. And you do all of this because, somewhere deep inside, there's still a fear that being your true self will cost you the love of the people around you. Maybe that's why setting boundaries brings so much guilt. The guilt doesn't arise because you're doing something wrong. It appears because your mind has learned to associate self-care with the risk of rejection. And as long as that association remains buried in the unconscious, every attempt to choose yourself will feel like a threat, when in reality, it's the very first step toward emotional healing. Jung understood that whatever remains unconscious continues to shape our decisions without our awareness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's a deeply rooted psychological pattern. There's another powerful quote often attributed to Jung that becomes especially meaningful here: "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can anyone discover who they really are after spending so many years playing a role created to please others? That question changes everything because it reveals that the problem was never your ability to love others. The real conflict is that you were never taught to offer that same love to your own soul. And the moment that realization begins to awaken, a new door opens. Because behind the persona lies something that very few people have the courage to face, something that explains why we keep repeating the same cycles, even when we know they're causing us pain. If this reflection stirred something within you, leave a comment with the words, "I want to discover my true self." Sometimes, transformation begins the very moment we give a name to what has been hidden all along. Here's a natural, fluent American English translation that preserves the original meaning, tone, and psychological depth while adapting the language to sound authentic for a US audience. Since the final lines are production instructions rather than part of the narration, they have been translated faithfully as well. This is precisely where Carl Jung invites us to look at what we avoid the most: the shadow. Among all the concepts in analytical psychology, this is perhaps one of the most transformative, because it explains why so many people spend years trying to change their lives without ever breaking free from the same recurring patterns. The shadow represents everything we've learned to hide in order to be accepted. Not just our flaws, as many people assume, but also our needs, our spontaneity, our strength, our boundaries, and even our right to say, enough. Every time you suppress an authentic part of yourself to preserve someone else's approval, that part doesn't disappear. It simply retreats into the unconscious, where it continues to shape your choices from behind the scenes. You may believe that ignoring your feelings is a sign of maturity. But the human mind doesn't work that way. Whatever is repressed will always find another way to express itself. The anger you never allowed yourself to feel may emerge as anxiety. The sadness you learned to hide may become a constant sense of emptiness. Your need to set boundaries may show up as unexplained exhaustion. And your desire to live your own life may reveal itself as a persistent feeling that something is missing, even when everything on the surface seems perfectly fine. Jung famously said, "What you resist, persists." Those words reveal a profound truth about emotional healing. The more you try to silence important parts of your personality in order to maintain a perfect image, the more energy it takes to keep that mask in place. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You may manage it for a little while, but the moment your strength begins to fade, everything comes rushing back to the surface with even greater force. Maybe that's why some people experience a kind of exhaustion that no amount of rest can fix. It's not just the body that's tired. It's the soul that spent far too long trying to be someone it was never meant to be. And the longer you live disconnected from your true nature, the harder it becomes to recognize your own inner voice. You begin to doubt your intuition. You seek permission to feel. You wait for validation before making decisions. You come to believe that your happiness depends on the approval of those around you. Little by little, you stop being the main character in your own story and become a supporting character in everyone else's. But something extraordinary begins to happen the moment you start recognizing these patterns. Simply becoming aware of them means your consciousness is expanding. And for Jung, every genuine transformation begins when the light of consciousness reaches what has long remained hidden within the unconscious. That's the moment healing stops being just a hope and begins to become a real possibility. But this awakening brings a consequence that few people expect. Because once you finally reconnect with your true identity, certain choices no longer make sense, some relationships begin to change, and one unavoidable question starts occupying your mind. If this reflection resonated with you, leave the word "awakening" in the comments. Sometimes a single word marks the moment we decide to stop running from who we truly are. This is exactly the moment when many people begin to believe that putting themselves first would be an act of selfishness. Maybe you felt this conflict too. Whenever you try to set a boundary, decline a request, or simply make time to care for your own emotional well-being, an inner voice appears, telling you that you should be doing more for everyone else. That voice sounds moral. It sounds right. But most of the time, it doesn't come from wisdom. It comes from fear. Fear of disappointing others, of losing important relationships, of no longer being needed. Or of discovering who you really are once you're no longer busy trying to save everyone else. Carl Jung understood that genuine psychological transformation requires the courage to break free from old identities. The process of individuation, one of the foundations of analytical psychology, doesn't mean becoming someone different. It means peeling away, layer by layer, everything that has covered your true essence throughout your life. It's like restoring a masterpiece that has been hidden beneath countless layers of paint. Its beauty never disappeared, it simply remained hidden for a very long time. That's why putting yourself first doesn't mean loving other people less. It means no longer abandoning yourself. That distinction completely changes the way you see self-care. When you honor your boundaries, protect your energy, and learn to listen to your own inner wisdom, you're not pushing love away from your life. You're making that love more genuine, because it no longer grows out of a need for approval, it grows out of inner freedom. Jung believed that no one can truly offer others what they haven't first discovered within themselves. If there's emptiness inside, we offer dependency. If there's fear, we offer control. But when there's inner balance, we offer presence, maturity, and authenticity. You may notice that some people won't like this change. After all, those who benefited from your inability to say no will probably be unsettled when you begin setting healthy boundaries. And that may trigger feelings of guilt. But guilt isn't always a sign that you're doing something wrong. More often than not, it's simply the natural discomfort of letting go of a role you've been playing for years. The mind resists change because it prefers the safety of what's familiar, even when that familiarity is the very thing causing emotional suffering. There's a quote often attributed to Jung that captures this moment beautifully: "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That choice begins with the small decisions you make every day. It shows up when you respect your own time, when you stop apologizing for your existence, and when you realize your self-worth can no longer depend on external validation. And the more you strengthen this new identity, the more a quiet truth begins to reveal itself. You realize you didn't lose people because you changed. In many cases, you simply stopped sustaining relationships that could only survive because you kept abandoning yourself. And that realization creates space for an even deeper understanding of what emotional healing truly means. If this message spoke directly to your heart, leave the word courage in the comments. Sometimes, all it takes for transformation to begin is the conscious decision to stop abandoning your true self. After understanding the persona, recognizing the shadow, and beginning the process of individuation, one inevitable question arises: who do you become when you finally stop living to meet everyone else's expectations? It's a frightening question because there isn't a ready-made answer. It has to be discovered through experience, in every choice you make, every boundary you set, and every moment you decide to listen to your own inner voice before seeking external approval. This is where true psychological freedom begins. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to stop being ruled by the fear of disappointing others. Carl Jung believed that the greatest adventure in life is becoming who you truly are. That idea sounds simple, yet it carries extraordinary depth. For years, you may have searched for happiness through praise, recognition, and acceptance. You may have believed that if you were good enough, helpful enough, or indispensable enough, you would finally find peace. But peace never comes when it depends on other people's choices. It begins the moment you realize your worth no longer has to be negotiated. That's the moment putting yourself first stops feeling like selfishness and becomes a commitment to your own truth. Ironically, this transformation also changes the way you relate to the world around you. You stop helping others out of fear of rejection and begin helping because you genuinely choose to. You stop remaining in relationships that drain your energy simply to avoid conflict. You learn that saying no to what damages your emotional well-being is often the most sincere way of saying yes to the life you truly want to build. This is the point where emotional healing stops being just an idea and begins to reveal itself in the quiet, everyday choices you make. Some people may not understand this transformation. They may say you've changed, that you've become distant or different. And they'll be right. You have changed. But not because you've lost your true self. You've changed because you've finally begun to reclaim it. Jung believed that once something has been brought into consciousness, it can never fully return to its former state. Once you recognize the unconscious forces that have been shaping your life, it's incredibly difficult to keep living the way you once did. There is a price to awakening, but there's an even greater price to remaining asleep. So if there's one decision that can mark the beginning of a new chapter in your life, perhaps it's this: stop asking for permission to exist. Your story doesn't have to keep being written by fear, guilt, or the constant need to please everyone around you. It can be written through authenticity, self-awareness, and the courage to honor who you truly are. This path won't always be the easiest one, but it's the only path that leads to a peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. And perhaps that is Carl Jung's greatest lesson for all of us: healing begins the moment you stop searching for your worth outside yourself and decide to discover it within. If this message touched you in any way, leave the words, "Today, I choose myself," in the comments. It may be more than just a phrase. It may become the first promise you make to the person who has been waiting for you your entire life. If you've made it this far, maybe it wasn't by chance. Maybe some part of your own story recognized itself in every reflection, every idea, and every insight we shared today. And if this video awakened something within you, don't ignore that feeling. More often than not, transformation begins with a single moment of awareness, the moment we finally see what has been hidden deep within us for years. If this message resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This is a place for people who want to better understand the human mind, deepen their self-awareness, and apply Carl Jung's teachings to live with greater consciousness, authenticity, and emotional freedom. If this video felt like it was speaking directly to you, there are many more powerful reflections waiting for you in the videos ahead. Now I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment saying, "This message reflects exactly how I feel," or share, in your own words, which part of this video touched you the most. Your story may be exactly the encouragement someone else needs to begin their own journey of emotional healing and personal growth. If this video added value to your life, please give it a like. That simple gesture helps YouTube recommend this message to more people who may be silently carrying guilt, fear, and emotional wounds they've never been able to put into words. And if, while watching, someone came to mind, someone who always puts everyone else first while forgetting themselves, share this video with them. Sometimes a single conversation, a single insight, or even a single video can completely change the way someone sees their own life. And don't stop here. In the next video, we'll explore one of Carl Jung's most transformative psychological insights and uncover why so many people remain trapped in the same emotional patterns, even when they believe they're changing. You'll learn how to recognize these invisible mechanisms and take another meaningful step on the path toward individuation and genuine inner freedom. Click on the next video that's now appearing on your screen, and continue this journey of self-discovery. I'm confident the next reflection may answer questions you've been carrying for far longer than you realize.